For everyone who's joining us, welcome to the show. We're here, the Hip Hop Hustle podcast. I'm extremely excited about my guest today. It's the one, the only Isadora. I love having Australian accents on the show. I don't have Australian accents on the show very often, but I think it's starting to become more of a thing because, hey, Aussies are doing amazing things across the globe with regards to music and entertainment, and you're one of those people. You've got one of the people who are literally growing into R&B, and it's awesome to see that R&B can come from Australia, and that we can make waves. But for anyone who hasn't checked it out, you released a Grow EP most recently, like you're adding songs at a time, and then you've got another EP coming on Friday. So it's the 27th. It'll be Saturday for Australians, but that'll be out right now. So by the time this podcast drops, that'll be out right now.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's so
so this will be
exciting.
out. So make sure you check Read Between the Sheets. So that is out right now. Check it out. It is already fantastic. I can guarantee that. But Isadora, it's fantastic to have you on the show.
Thank you. Very honored to be here.
Well, how is it like doing R&B? Like being an Australian, I feel like people would hear your accent come out and then they hear the music you make and they're like, oh, I kind of don't associate Australia with R&B.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really in Australia right now, and I think that answers the question on how it is to be an R&B act in Australia. There are so many talented artists and producers and writers out there, but I think the general consensus is it's such a baby phase of the industry that it's so hard to grow. There's very little infrastructure. And I just felt like I needed to spread my wings. And I think I made the right decision. So I'm currently in LA. I bounce back and forth between London and LA. And I'm just finding so many great people and circles here. And I feel like things are happening. So yeah, that's how things are going right now in the R&B space.
Well, they definitely are because, yeah, you're definitely making amazing music. But, when it comes to Australia, what do you think that is that's holding it back? Like, why do you think people need to move to the Mecca, like LA, London, New York? I feel like that happens quite a
I don't
bit.
think people do need to. I want to clarify that. Like there are so many amazing R&B artists that are killing it from Australia. One of my favorite artists in Australia and worldwide is Zuhair. He's Melbourne based and he's never left Melbourne, but his career is flourishing and he's doing so well. And I think it's each to their own. And I think with social media, you don't need to necessarily leave. But I feel like with my journey, I felt the need to kind of get out and explore the industry in LA and London. That was just a personal decision.
Yeah. What made you feel the need?
I mean, it's tricky because I don't want to sound ungrateful for what the Australian scene has done because they helped me so much and I wouldn't be who I am without them. But at the same time, I did, to be honest, struggle. Like I struggled finding producers that wanted to work long term with me and collaborate as opposed to, and everyone needs to pay rent. I get it. But independent artists such as myself are not in a position to pay thousands of dollars in session fees, especially when you're building your sound. Like you need to find that core group of people that want to collaborate with you long term. And if anyone thinks that's unreasonable, I beg you to research the trajectory of all your favorite artists. They had their go-to producers from the beginning that were just building with them. Otherwise, how can you expect independent artists to grow? So I was struggling to find that group, that core. I felt like I didn't really have my people necessarily. I don't know if that's just a personal experience, but I've definitely heard it from other people as well. Versus the second I came out to LA and I showed people what I could do, I have a session every day. I was being booked as a writer for other people as well. I was being recognized for what I did, and people, when I would go to events, would tell me that they loved my music and my work. And it was such a huge shift from me feeling like I had to beg to get into certain rooms that I felt like I should be able to get into. So yeah, all that to say, I love the Australian scene. There are so many incredible people that I've worked with that have helped me develop, but I think it's such a seismic shift coming to a place where collaboration is celebrated.
I don't think that's ungrateful. I think that's being a realist. Like, I think
Yeah.
at some point, every artist has to make a decision, whether it's an easy or a tough one, a decision of like, what am I willing to do for the betterment of my own art and my own career? So,
Yeah.
so I think sometimes artists are tough on themselves and going like, and you feel a little bit of like duty to your hometown, and you feel a
Was.
little bit of guilt of like leaving your hometown, but you don't owe it anything. I genuinely believe it. Like, if it's tough and you make a strategic move and it pays off, that's the right move. You did the right thing.
Yeah, no, you're so right, and I think I had to work through that guilt, and but then I reminded myself I've dedicated, I would say, 5 years to being in the Australian music industry. In that time, like out of my own pocket, I ran at like a huge women in music event. And that was my attempt of really trying to stimulate collaboration and connect people. It did not benefit me at all to do this, but I really want to see the Australian music scene flourish, especially women in the music industry. That's like a huge passion of mine, and trying to make sure that especially women who are just starting up feel safe and know who to approach. And I tried to do all these things and I didn't feel like anything was really happening. And then I just made the call 2 years ago that I just needed to leave. And I still come back to Australia every year and I work with incredible people. But yeah, I'm just always hesitant because people have told me to never really express how I felt about the Australian music scene because it sounds ungrateful. But if anything, I think speaking about this will help the Australian music scene be better.
Why? Why? That sounds like a really weird thing to say, to not tell you. Like, I don't understand why they would say to you not to express that.
Because you don't want to seem ungrateful or like you're ratting on about the scene that built you from the beginning, and which I'm definitely not doing right now, but just that risk I think they were worried about. But to be honest, I'm at the point where I do want to see the Australian music scene grow, and I don't think that's going to happen unless we really tackle the issues that are happening right now. One of those being nobody wants to collaborate, nobody wants to think long term. There aren't people there that are building infrastructure and are stepping into management roles and agent roles. It's kind of just a pool of talented artists not knowing what to do with their talent, myself included.
Oh, so is that the problem, that there are lots of artists, there's just no like
So,
layers of infrastructure, there's no one putting people together, there's no one like dealing with the business side of it.
yeah, it took me, I would say, 4, 5 years to meet someone that asked me what was my long term goal and what kind of artist I would be. Because everyone previous to that, it was very short term. Okay, what sound do you want? Let me produce it. Here's the fee. It's out. You might not ever speak to them again. That was my experience. I know a lot of people have much better experiences, but I felt when I came to LA and London, people were interested in what's your business plan? And then I had to think, oh my God, like that's not ever something that I hear people really talk about in my circles back home. And it's so important that now I'm already thinking long term. People are jumping on board in a more long term, sustainable way, supporting my project because it does take a village.
What is your long-term plan?
My long term plan is to be fully financially stable as a recording artist, which doesn't sound like a sexy answer. But the longer you're in this industry, the more you go, if I can pay my rent off music to be real, that's that's happiness, that's freedom, that's success for me. And beyond that is I want to obviously touch people and their lives and help people and build an incredible community and platform. And then for myself, extend that into courses that I feel really passionate about. So things in the space of philanthropy and social justice and all of that. That's my personal goal. But to, in a long term sense, just be able to say to be financially stable off music in the long run is such a huge goal within itself. It doesn't sound sexy, but that's real. That's what we're striving for. And even signed artists still have that goal because it's so difficult.
Yeah, I've been hearing more and more from artists that being full-time artist and not being really stressed and really strapped is really difficult. Like, I cannot explain how many people are just like, hey, like it's really hard. Like if you think you're getting into the music industry and you see the success stories like the Justin Bieber, he blows up off YouTube and then you go to the top and you've made a career like that. That
Yeah.
just doesn't happen. That's not the reality. And it's
No, there's
rough.
very few industry plants and people getting development deals. That's not really happening anymore. They're waiting for you to make it big on your own and then they jump on. But like the crazy thing is for me, I get this feedback from people that meet me of, damn, I didn't know you were hustling like that. Because, you spend so long building up a brand that looks a certain way. And perhaps if you look at my page, you might think, oh, she's clearly being funded from someone. Oh, she's clearly signed to something. She's comfortable. And then people meet me and they're like, oh, you're hustling. Like yeah, doing it like quite tough. Obviously, I have a roof over my head. Sometimes it's not my own roof. A lot of the times it's very kind people that are letting me crash at their house. But I do want to talk about this because it's important to not glorify something you don't understand. I'm definitely not in a position right now where I'm super comfortable and just spending a lot of money and living this glamorous life. As much as I'm a super positive person, it's not always sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, I think that is important to talk about because I think the challenges and maybe even 10, 20 years ago when you were thinking about becoming a musician, the dream versus the reality of it are two very different things. Like I think people get caught in what could be. They get caught in just seeing the lifestyle, the glamour, the like, and then they think, oh, that's what the music industry is. And then you get into it, and then you're like, oh no, this is a tumble dryer, and I'm gonna get bounced around. And there are people who are very experienced that I got to be wary of. There are contracts, there are all these things, and I may not make money for a long time. And I think that is critical to talk about so that at least people come in with a plan. Because I think
Definitely.
that's what hurts is when you don't
And
have
I
a
think,
plan.
well, it depends on what you want out of the industry. If your goal is purely just to make money and be dressed in designer and drive a fancy car, perhaps if that was my goal, I would be there already or a lot closer. But because I have different goals and different standards for myself, I'm taking the slow route, I would say, of being independent and doing things that I believe in and doing things the right way. It can take a lot longer, but I think the important thing in that if you're stepping into the industry is to really understand why you're doing this. Because if you go into this industry with just superficial goals of being rich and famous, which is not even superficial, but if that's purely the only thing you want, fame and money, you might end up doing things that you are not proud of. And you might end up in circles that are not healthy for you because you're blinded by this ambition that isn't grounded in anything concrete and real, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it is difficult for people because like that is a real value discussion you have to have for yourself. That's
Yeah.
like, what do I stand for? What do I really want? When I go to sleep, what do I want to be able to say that I've done at night? I think those things are really difficult to recognize. And I think they almost get like, it wouldn't surprise me if you get caught in the flow of something. You meet someone, they introduce you to
So
this person.
easy.
Yeah.
Especially being in LA, I'm not a materialistic person by any means. You can look at my page and think one thing, but if you know me personally, you'll know that I'm not a materialistic person. Yet coming to LA, I have to catch myself and be like, oh, why am I wanting this certain thing? But it's because it's so glorified out here. But I think if you have good people around you, good set of morals and values that are holding you down, you'll be okay. Otherwise, you're just blinded by this ambition to achieve something and you'll really do anything for it. So for me, one of the most important things is empowering women. Forever that will be one of my top priorities in all my songs, in my lyrics. I make such an effort to champion women. And that means sometimes that I can't always do things that could get me easy success. So, collaborations I've been offered and features that I've been offered, which I've been so grateful for. But if the collaborator is not speaking in a way that feels empowering to women, I'm not going to accept it. Or if I feel like that person maybe represents something that wouldn't make my female followers feel comfortable, I'm not going to work with them. And that could have gotten me a ton of followers, a ton of streams, money, but I'm still going to say no because I want my music to be a space for women to feel comfortable.
How is it as a woman in the music industry? I mean, I always say this, I'm outside of the industry because I just do my own podcast. No one tells me what to do. I I run the show essentially. Like there's no one to be able to be like, don't do that. So I very much live in my own bubble. And my window into the industry is speaking to people like you, having these conversations, seeing what you're doing. And that's essentially as far as it goes. But as a person who's in it, as a person who has opportunities, as a person who's seen it, how is it for women navigating the music industry as a whole, or from what you've experienced?
I mean, how much time do you have
I thought a little bit of time.
to talk about? Um, yeah, it's it's interesting. There are benefits and there are negatives. What can I say? Obviously, being a woman, there are perks. You can't deny that. But I don't think they are outweighed. They are, sorry, I think they are outweighed by the negatives. 100%. Some of those being, and I say all of this to speak to anyone out there that's potentially starting out in the industry that wants to know the reality of what it's like. You are not always taken seriously as an artist, but also an opportunity for sex. Let's be real. A lot of the producers, I would say, that reach out to me online or writers or artists are so great and so pure with their intentions. But every now and again, you do get that person that is approaching you and you can kind of spot the red flags as to, okay, if I do go to their studio, am I going to get a session out of that or am I going to be left feeling very uncomfortable? Also, you just have the day-to-day struggles of being a woman in the world and in any industry, which is you are vulnerable to predators. And the music industry exacerbates that because in what other industry is it appropriate to be meeting someone at 2 a.m. at the studio alone? Or potentially go to bedroom studios. Like, to be real, a lot of the incredible music I've made has been made in bedrooms. Like that's the reality of working with independent producers and independent artists. So that's a risk in itself. In what other industry is it appropriate to meet a man for the first time on your own in a bedroom? Like even just saying that out loud is crazy, but that's such a normal part of the industry. And a lot of my favorite songs I've made have come from that environment. And going out to clubs to network and parties to network, house parties to network. This is like such a unique industry, which makes being a woman and navigating the normal world even more exacerbated because the music industry is so weird in that sense. So it's a lot of looking over your shoulder. It's a lot of overthinking. It's a lot of questioning people's intentions. It's a lot of, hey girl, have you worked with so-and-so? They invited me to a session. Do you think it's a good idea? No, I don't. I've heard ABC, don't go. Or how about I come with you? It's a lot of, for me, female camaraderie and building strong connections with the people that I do trust and being able to sometimes come to sessions with friends that are happy to accompany me or a writer. And it's a lot of, it's a lot of back and forth and sometimes having to sever ties with people that could help you because at the end of the day, you know that you might be put in an uncomfortable position. So yeah, it's a lot.
As you explained that, I was like, this is wild. Like my background is in corporate. So I would never meet.
Well, we'll experience that as well.
Yeah. So but I think corporate is easier because there are clear defined boundaries and there are very clear specific rules. And like
True. There's
there,
HR.
there's HR, there's at least things where like, hey, if you spoke to 99% of people, they would know that meeting with X person in their bedroom is not appropriate. So like there are very clear defined lines of appropriate and not appropriate. And that doesn't make it's better because at least I think corporate is moving in the right direction. Like in terms of the time that I've spent in corporate, it's moving in the right direction. But in an industry where there's no real guidelines, there are so many independent people and it's just like everyone is doing different things. Just the fact that you have to call people and be like, hey, have you heard about this person and validate all of those things? I'm just like, oh, the minefield is insane.
And that's a huge thing people should do more of. And I always tell women starting out in the industry, ask me, ask me about someone. I will tell you what I honestly think. And I think thankfully we're so over the days of protecting people because that's not helping anyone, to be honest. And we're just kind of like, yeah, if I can help provide some clarity on a situation, I will. And also, I really advocate for people bringing other people to sessions. And if for some reason the producer, writer, artist feels the type of way about you bringing someone, they don't have good intentions. So bring people with you. I bring people all the time. One of my best friends, Ethan, that I'm staying with in LA, he is an incredible writer and artist. And I will bring him along to sessions and it would just make me feel a lot safer. And God forbid someone felt a type of way about that, I would know immediately that they're not there for the right reasons.
Yeah. And I think you have to trust your gut instinct. Sometimes you can get caught in trying to convince logic your way into things. Like your gut will tell you something and you're like, no, I'm just being silly or I'm just being paranoid. And you try to override it with logic. And sometimes it's just like, just don't do it. Just trust
True.
your
I
instinct.
want to challenge that because sometimes your gut's wrong. No one ever says that. Everyone's like, trust your gut, trust it. My gut's been wrong. What's been right? Stories that other people have told me. Not always, but if you have many women telling you one thing about someone, listen to that. Because as much as that person's charmed you and made you feel comfortable, I don't think groups of women like that would be saying something all the same without knowing that each other is saying it for no reason. So yes, your gut is so important and that feeling of discomfort you have to listen to, but also combine that with what have these other people said about this person and what have their experiences been.
Yeah. Doing your homework is the best thing. But I think in this scenario, like if you're in a situation that you end up like, you got to just like trust your instinct.
Or if you feel, don't trust your gut if it's saying something positive.
Yeah.
Like if sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. If you've got a negative gut feeling, 100% follow that. And if you feel uncomfortable, even if there's nothing concrete about why you feel comfortable, definitely exit that situation.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, you're like, hey, it's an awesome position to be in when you find people you can trust and can work with. And it takes that burden away. Like it is like, must be so freeing to be able to have people that you can just go to and not worry and go like, hey, we've worked together many times. Like we have a great relationship. I know that it is purely professional and that we're just doing the thing to make the best art. That's an extremely freeing feeling.
Yes, or you develop friendships from that where it's like, if you're having a bad day in the studio, they can sense that and they're okay being like, you want to wrap early? You just want to chat? Do you want some tea? Like having those relationships is so important as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me very thankful in sometimes that I'm not a musician having to go through all these things. Like people have asked me if I wanted to make my own music and it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. I think I like talking to musicians and
Then speaking to musicians, you'd hear all the horror stories and you're like, no, no. But that's all to say that, as you said, there's so many incredible people out there. And I'm so grateful for the circle that I have around me now.
But I also get to hear the awesome stuff.
Yeah.
That's the incredible thing. I get to hear about like people making their dreams come true, experiencing like, hey, I never thought I would be at this point. Like I started singing in a choir and now I'm singing in front of thousands of people on the stage. That journey in itself is pretty incredible to be able to listen to.
So true. So true.
Yeah. Do you like performing in front of people?
Performing for me is not my favorite thing to do. I am a studio baby. I love being in the studio. I love writing. That's my favorite thing in the world. I love being in my little cocoon. And yet to really find a love for performing, to be honest. I am practicing. But yeah, some artists just are studio babies and some are like performance, loves being on stage, and they hate being in the studio. I love being in a studio. That's my safe space.
Yeah, because I remember interviewing an artist, I think her name was Kels, a long time ago, and she didn't like performing in studios. She liked recording on stage. Like she has released songs on her Spotify and on her pages, like of literally live shows. And she sounds incredible, but she was just like, I get my energy from being on stage. So I find it fascinating that like some people are purely like, I want to perform live. I like the theater of not being able to take anything back, and it's slightly different every time. And then obviously being in studio and being like, hey, I'm in a controlled environment and I get to do exactly
That's
what I want.
a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to vocals. So I need my teeth, I need my mic, like my home setup, which I record most of my stuff in, and just record in my little bubble or record with very few people that I trust. Other than that, I'm just recording by myself. I'm spending hours and hours and hours perfecting it and getting all the vocal stacks perfect. That's my thing.
How do you manage being a perfectionist? Like it sounds pretty rough because especially considering you don't just record a song and you're like, okay, I'm done. You record it and then you listen to it and then you analyze it and then you're also working on things. So you're also like trying to develop as an artist. And by the time a song is recorded and edited and released and re-recorded, it's like months of process. So how does the perfectionist in you accept things and just like is like, okay, I'm done. I'm ready to go.
I think I surround myself with people that are so great at what they do that I can relax a little bit and I can really just consciously say to myself, it's done. Like when they think it's really great and it's done, it's done. But at the same time, sometimes I have to be that annoying person that's like, I know you guys all think that this is great, but like, I think the lower end needs to come out more in the vocals. I think the bass is way too loud. I feel like that third harmony is flat on the third note. Like I have to sometimes say that, but because I'm working with people that are so passionate about it, they're okay. So it works. I don't feel like I'm annoying them. They're like, okay, if you think it can be better, it will be better. But then once that master is done, I'm not listening to it. Like it is going into the system and I'm not going to listen to it because if I sit there and listen to something again and again, I'm going to find something and I'm going to start questioning it. But once the master is done, it's out of my hands.
That's the funniest thing about musicians I've found is that you will always find something.
Always. Always. I could be listening to something, making something for a month and I love it. And then at the very end, it's mastered, it's submitted, and I'd be like, damn, was that note like a little sharp? Or like, why is this it's like there's like a little clip or a little something in there, and then people will be like, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, I'm hearing it. And then I know I need it. Okay, what's done is done. So I'm learning to just be able to turn it off. And I think I'm so excited for the future and all the music I have coming out. I can refocus my energy very easily on all the amazing stuff I've got coming out instead of something that's already been submitted.
Maybe that's why you're not a huge fan of performing on stage at the moment. is you want it all to be perfect. Like you want it all to be
Yeah.
delivered the exact way it's supposed to be delivered.
100%. You've hit the nail on the head. And people I've worked with and coaches, they're like, it's not always going to be perfect live. They're like, you sound great, but it's not going to be like the recording. And I'm like, then I can't do it. That drives me crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just something we all have to get over. I think, well, considering, I very rarely edit for content on these podcasts. Like it is very raw and real, like most of what we've spoken about on stage. You do learn to accept that it's not going to be perfect. It's a weird thing. There's no such thing as you said. I swear, every artist is like, a song's not really done. It's never finished. You can always re-edit it. You can always record. You can always do something.
Yeah. But I think for me, I've learned that when me and my team think it's done and people that I trust their ears of say it's done, it's done.
And then do you ever listen to that song again? Or are you like, once it's out there in the world, it's yours and I'm on to my next?
Once it's like mastered and in the system, I won't because then I'll freak myself out. But once it's out, I'll listen to it a couple times. Yeah. But I'm more so focused on all the new stuff that are coming out.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense to me not to listen to it. I don't re-listen to my episodes once they've been
Yeah,
released.
you've lived it already.
Yeah. I've lived it and I've listened to it and I've edited it and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to go back and reanalyze and re-critique myself. I've already done that enough to death. So, yeah, it is weird. It's weird how when you make stuff, you're kind of like, I don't want to see it. Like, I don't know. That's my experience. I'm like, I don't want to see it.
Visuals, like all my visuals, if I watch it, I'll find something to hate. So I need to learn that once I've sent my final okay on something, I'm not going back. Sometimes I go back, but I'll try my hardest not to.
What do you think that is about people that we can't help but find more critiques? Like that no matter what, we're just always looking for the imperfections instead of, we could easily be doing the opposite, which is, hey, I'm proud of myself, or hey, this looks wonderful, or hey, 99.9% of this is amazing. And instead we're fixated on the little thing that we saw that no one else saw. I've always found that really weird about people.
Well, I think we are our greatest critics. And I think in this industry, we are exposed to so much perfect content, airbrushed, everything is perfectly lit, everything's produced and tuned to perfection. So our standards for ourselves are so high. And as independent artists, to try and reach that level, it just takes so much perfectionism. But in saying that, there are a lot of artists that are a lot more raw, and that works great for them. And maybe I will be able to incorporate a bit more rawness into my work. But for now, I feel like I'm definitely crippled by this. Not crippled, but in a healthy way, I think I'm trying to always be better and better and better and try and reach that level of even the sound and quality of my mix and master. I want it to sound like all of my favorite artists. So I'm going to push for that. And my writing, I'm always going to try and push myself. And my visuals, even though budgets are insanely low, like I'm going to try and do my best for it to emulate the quality of the art that I want to digest.
It's pretty incredible, the quality of the tech out there at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like that wasn't doable.
No, and the fact that I record and do a lot of my own vocal production in a remote setup, that I'm in an Airbnb now and I've got a little setup. Like the fact that I can do that and send it off to producers that deal with big artists and they can still listen to my vocals and say, damn, like these are really clear. I'm like, this is incredible technology.
Yeah. It's wild how accessible it's all become so quickly. I mean, yeah, I set up a podcast pretty quickly on your own. Like you can do it. It's not that difficult. I think there is a joke of like, hey, if you're a middle-aged dude, like when are you going to set your podcast? Like it's just every person just can set one up. Like the barrier to entry is really low, which is really good, but it's also kind of like on the flip side, like anyone can do it, doesn't mean everyone should do it. I think that's the thing that I struggle with sometimes. I go through that. I'm like, should I be doing it? But I think if you want to, you should be able to at least give it a go.
Yeah, I think there should be like a base level of, are you like, I think that comment in particular is like, are you like a super misogynistic prick? Then maybe don't have a podcast. But for everyone else, go for it. Explore that side of yourself.
Yeah, I think the weird thing about people with podcasts, and the irony is not lost on me, is that for the most part, people think that their opinions are really good. And so they're like, it's almost like an excuse to be like, let me just talk to the world and preach a little bit. And I don't know, that's always been a fear of mine, is like, I don't particularly want to preach.
Opinion. I don't think you, but I used to have a podcast, actually, me and my friend. Probably should not be saying this because it's not. But it was all about like relationships and dating and navigating the world. And it was hard to keep up. So props to you, because podcasts are a lot harder to stay consistent on than you think.
Yeah, it's the one a week that's hard. It's the drop all the time. And do you know the weird thing about like relationship podcasts? You realize there's only so much you've got to say at some point. Like if you're releasing one a week, it's almost like at some point I've kind of said what my piece. That's why I interview people, because I'm like, I don't have the
Something new every week.
I don't have the ability to just sit and rant.
I could have done a podcast every day about relationships and love. The issue was I looked at myself and I was like, do I have like any evidence that my opinions work? No. So I'm going to shut up about it and let maybe someone who's in a great healthy relationship, or Esther Perel, talk about relationships. But in saying that, a lot of people did love our podcast because it was so real, funny, and like, even though I still haven't achieved that level of healthy relationships that I preach about, I still had a lot of wisdom to share. So I did have a lot to say about it. But yeah, there's a lot of relationship podcasts out there. It's like, I'm gonna let other people do their thing.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna let the pros.
Yeah.
Put them.
Because me and my girl, we're just yapping at like about life right now.
Yeah. Well, hence why I don't really give that many opinions on music, to be honest. It's not like, I'm not, like, as I said, I'm not in the industry. It's not really like my lane. So like, my opinion is very much as a consumer of music and as a person who just like listens to it, rather than someone who's like, let me tell you how it works. The only thing that I know is through the conversations that I've had. That's where I've learned the most.
Yeah, I mean, it's still important, opinions of a consumer.
Yeah. Well, some consumers. I think it's at some point, because here's my genuine view. As a consumer, I'm like, you shouldn't think sometimes artists get caught in giving too much power to the audience. And I think the thing that made you great is that you made your genuine art. And then all of a sudden you get fans, and then the fans start dictating what you should do. The formula is different now. Now you're no longer listening to your inner voice that propelled you to begin with. So the only duty you really have is to yourself, in the sense of make your genuine art. If fans drop off, so be it. But I think you can't be caught in listening to every whim of a fan, because otherwise it's just not yours anymore. It becomes theirs.
That's great advice. Great advice. Yeah, I think I'm lucky with my listeners and people that are following me so far. They kind of just support me no matter what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm yet to have people that are pushing and pulling me in different directions. But I definitely do agree with you that you've got to just come back to your own voice at the end of the day, and your own love for music and what you want to create.
Well, it goes back to what you said at the beginning. What are your values? What are you in this for? Like, what do you want to be able to do with your own career? And do you want to like the music that you release?
Exactly. Like, if you don't really care about the music and you're in it for different reasons, you're going to be making everything under the sun and following trends, which is awesome for you. Like, can't say anything bad about that. But if you want to create a specific sound and you're going to stay true to that, it might take you a little bit longer.
Yeah. Well, do you know what I like that you've been doing is your behind the scenes raw footage. I feel like that's like a nice way to be like, see behind the end product. Like there's something really cool about being able to see like you going, oh no, I didn't rate that vocal, or like you're having fun in this. And it's just the experience behind what comes out as the end product. So I think you are doing a good job of like starting to show more like raw and real experiences.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying. It's hard to be in the mindset of being in the studio and trying to get content at the same time, but I'm trying.
How do you do that? How do you find that balance?
It's hard, and I don't think people give artists enough props for simultaneously being artists and social media personalities and content creators. But it is hard. But I'm getting in a pattern of let me just set this phone up on this tripod, not think about it, and carry on with me making stuff. And also, again, because I'm working with people now that really believe in what I'm doing, they're now going, oh, let me pull up a camera and record this because it's going to be important to have this content. So that's also been great as well. But it's definitely tricky. And I don't necessarily want to be an influencer or someone that's constantly filming myself, but I'm forcing myself to do it because that's the new age of artistry. It's not necessarily something every artist has to do. And there's so many successful artists that don't do it. But for me at this point, I'm like, I've got to give it a try. And that's the reality of it. But I'm finding something nice about having that line of communication with my listeners. That's not just my music.
Well, that's good. Because I was going to say, if you just hated it the whole time, then I would be worried.
Okay, relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It is weird because it's like, you kind of sometimes just want to be away from cameras and screens and like all of that. I don't know. I find the music industry really complicated at the moment, just with what you have to do to become quote unquote successful. Like I find it almost like a minefield of you're trying to navigate all these different things. And yeah, I just look at people like you and I'm just like, it's so impressive to be able to navigate it. Like genuinely, it's not easy. Like you, even in the span of this, well, we've spoken for like 40 minutes. We've spoken about all the pressures of all these different things, and you're trying to balance them all while also still be a person, and you still have family, and you still have friends, and you still have just what it requires to live a life. And I'm like, oh, there's just so much on every musician's
Like
plate.
managing myself now as well and being independent and leaving my home. There's just so many variables that make it like that much more complicated. And yeah, like to leave my friends and family and everything I know and any kind of speck of reliability and consistency in my life, leaving all of that has been crazy, but it's been amazing at the same time.
Are you mostly based in LA? Because I know you said you moved from LA to London, but which is your most predominant home?
I would say a mixture of both. I think 3 months, 2 months, like I kind of just go back and forth, and then I spend Christmas and New Year's with my family. So it's pretty like evenly split between London and LA now.
Do you? I see. Personally, I would just be like, hey, if I can catch London with warm weather, that'd be ideal. And if I can
I
catch
do.
LA,
I just travel around avoiding cold weather. I time it so that it's always warm.
well, hey, it's probably a smart thing. And then you get to come home to Australia at the right season.
Beautiful weather. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have not had a winter in a long time. But also that's not just like a pleasure seeking thing. That's when the industry and all the events are the best.
Yeah. Well, hey, I've been in Melbourne, surviving the winter here, and I gotta say, I'm so thankful it's coming to the end. Like
Yeah,
we had such a good day yesterday. It was like 22 degrees, and I was just like, oh, heaven.
that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when winter's up, I'm
It's just
sending
the wind.
you. Yeah. the wind and the rain that like travels like this, and then 1 second it's pouring, 1 second it's warm. Crazy.
All the things that we have to navigate being Melbourneian, but yeah, to be honest, it's not that difficult. We just like to complain about it, I think. I think,
You guys have a lot of other perks. The
yeah,
food.
yeah, the
Oh,
food, yeah,
great in Melbourne.
yeah. How is the food over like? Because I've been to London, I've never been to LA. I think I'll go to LA like probably early next year. But how is the food? Because I've been to those places. Sometimes I'm just like I just miss home. I can't tell if that's because I
Yeah,
miss
no,
home.
that's definitely a thing. Me and all my friends, like we've just come to the consensus we can travel the world, but the best food is in Australia. I swear. Like our produce is so fresh and everything feels so much more natural. And you have every cuisine you could ever want. The Asian food in Australia is next
Yeah,
level.
unbelievable.
Fortunately, London does not have that. LA is okay, but even then, like a lot of us Australians feel quite sick from the food in LA. It's not just me. So yeah, we often miss the food in Australia. I tell everyone in America, you need to eat the food in Australia. It's the best.
Yeah, because I went to New York a few months ago, and I was there, and like again, yeah, like it tastes good, but it doesn't feel good. Like that's the weird thing about American food. I found is like my body isn't thanking me for any
Yeah.
of it.
And you're eating something, you're like, there's like 20 different flavors going on here. I don't think they're all going to sit very well. Like, and it's just not a vibe. And I cook most of my meals. But when I do go out, sometimes if you know you're having a meeting with someone and you have to go out, and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to go to this place. I don't want to go to this place because you just, yeah, it's often not a vibe.
Yeah. Well, I got to
Sorry,
say though,
there are some great places here, but
as
yeah,
always, there are great places in every, but I think it's just the average, like what we're talking
yeah,
about is yeah. But I got to say, Italy, I love food in Italy.
true. As I was saying that, I was thinking about Italy food, but even then, a week and you're kind of you can't look at pasta again.
That's because they only have Italian food. Yeah.
Exactly. Where in Australia, you got everything.
Yeah. We've got variety,
Yeah.
which I do love. Like, yeah, you can walk down the street, you can be like, hey, I want to have Thai today, and then Japanese, and then Middle Eastern, and whatever else you want to have.
Food. I miss Thai food so much.
Well, hey, you'll get to come when you come down in over Christmas. That's not too
First
far
place
away.
I'm going, Thai Patong in Newtown. That's the first place I'm going. I'm
Shout
gonna
out.
make a shout out, you guys. You guys know what you're doing.
Yeah, it must be really good to be able to come home and like refresh and just kind of
Yeah.
breathe, kind of feel your cup again so that you get to go again for another 12 months.
Yes. I mean, that's the attempt. Sometimes I go back and I just work more, but to spend time with family and my dog so much is amazing. And just being in Australian air, like things I never appreciated before I left, but just like walking around, just walking. You can't really walk in the States or in LA specifically. So just walking, going on bushwalks, walking my dogs, just little things like that. I definitely miss.
Do you think you'll move back to Australia at some point? Like, when you're listening to your path, like, does it say that you're building at the moment in LA and then you'll come back, or is it like you're building and then you're gonna make a life in one of these places?
Good. I think if I can manage to create a life for myself, I'm globally successful, but able to be based in Australia with my family. Like, what more could I ask for? That's definitely incredible. And I would love, I think every young person that's left Australia has kind of said, I would only raise a family in Australia. And that's how I'm feeling for sure.
It's funny. As soon as you said you'd come home and live in Australia, you looked infinitely more relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's and it seems like a beautiful, beautiful place to set up that time of my life.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's weird thinking about those things. Like I think about it as well. Like, hey, where do I want to be? What do I want? And it's like all these different like images of your imagination and what it could all be like. And there's something about simplicity at that point in life where like, hey, family, friends, loved ones, stability, and then just
Definitely.
like the simple aspects of it, they're all the things that stand out. And I'm like, as I get older, I think about those things. As I get older, I'm like, oh no, it's the simple things in life that are the most important.
Of course. But I mean, who knows what will end up happening because I know I'm going to want to be traveling every few months and Australia does not make that easy.
No. Well,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
no, it does not. But yeah, I think, yeah, the flights are rough, like the
Yeah,
long
coming
flights.
from Europe and being able to get to a country in 45 minutes versus that's how long it takes me to get from my house in Sydney to the city. It's wild.
Yeah. Sydney traffic is not great.
No, no, no. And I think that's the other reason why the Australian scene is the way it is right now. We're just so damn far from everything. And not many people want to come out to Australia. And that's why whenever like someone from overseas comes and works, I'm like, thank you. Thank you for coming all the way to Australia. Like that's amazing because I know that trek is not attractive. Like 24 hours of traveling is not ideal.
But I think it ends up always being worth it. Like I've never heard of an artist coming to Australia and being like, I I didn't have a successful time, whether it be shows or anything. Like Aussie crowds do love shows. Like I tell
Yeah.
artists a lot that like every one of your fans will show up to a show because they know that they appreciate
But
the
I'll
investment,
never see you again.
literally. And they're like, I want you to come back. And so if I don't go to a show and it doesn't sell out, then you're not going to come back and I'm not going to see you again. So there's definitely that in the mindset of Australian fans.
So true. So true.
And then one day you'll come back and hopefully you're selling out shows and you're like, hey, hometown hero. Well, I'm assuming by that time you've overcome those concerns, you've like nailed all of that. There's no reason you can't.
Of course. And I can perform now and I have. I just did a little show in London, which was great. But I'm just too comfortable in the studio. That's my thing. But yeah, I've definitely like envisioned myself coming to Australia and doing the first leg of my tour or the last, whichever's the most special.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Have you, where does your gut feel? Do you think you'll start with the Australian or finish? Sometimes I'm like finishing in the hometown's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that I can invite all my friends and family and then we can just party and celebrate and then I can have my relaxation time back home.
Yeah. I think now that we've spoken about it, I think the last leg of the tour makes sense so that you don't have the pressure of like, okay, I have this show and I want to party, but I have like 8 more months of shows to do. So I'm
And having
stressed.
all the people I love in the crowd and not being able to hang out with them after. So definitely last leg of the tour. That's our manifestation. A big global tour ending in Australia.
Yeah. So, but I'm assuming you'd end in Sydney. So you did like Melbourne, Brisbane, end in Sydney,
Of course.
drop to New Zealand because like you're around, so you might as well go to New Zealand.
Yes, and I did grow up there, so I have to go. I'm
You did.
Kiwi.
Oh, you're part Kiwi.
Like I've got 3 citizenships, and that's one of them.
Oh, what are your other two? Well,
Australia
Australia's one.
and yeah, Egypt.
Egypt. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so I got to say, your Australian accent is on point. It's very little Kiwi inflection.
Okay, I thought you were going to say it hasn't faded because everyone's telling me it's fading.
Oh, it is fading. You say things like can't.
Oh, and I always said that because my dad said that.
Okay.
They grew up in Egypt, and I think British schools, American schools, just
Yeah.
their accents are very fusion, and I've always said that.
Okay. Well, I was going to be like, I can see it. I don't know. I think you do start losing a little bit of it when you hear a different
Natural.
English. Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny whenever I'm in Britain, like England, they say, "Oh, are you from America?" Whenever I'm from America, whenever I'm in America, they say, "Oh, are you British?" So I'm like, is anyone going to guess Australia?
Well, I wouldn't put too much stock on what the Americans think. Like
True.
no key, just a little jab. They think I sound British, and I know for a fact that I don't sound British at all.
So true. They really can't tell it apart. Yeah.
So sometimes they're like English. Who else speaks English? And it's
Yeah.
probably like the first trigger of like,
So true. That's so true. I never thought of it that way.
because whenever I'm there and they're like, oh, you're Australian, it's like a genuine surprise. Like, are you lost? Like, how did you end up here?
Yeah, yeah. And the first thing they say, oh my God, had you ever been beaten up by a kangaroo?
I
And then I'm
actually,
like, look, I'm like, it happened once. Like, it was just like a really traumatic experience. And they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, how do you guys not know that I'm being sarcastic right now?
well, I always like to tell them that's how I get to work. Like, I've got
Yeah,
a
like,
kangaroo in my backyard. I'm like, I sit next to the Joey and then we sit in the
fair
pouch. And
question.
I go, no.
Yeah.
They're like, really? And I'm like, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
I'll just be like, yeah, like I got into it once with a kangaroo and they're like, oh, damn, I'm like, were you injured? And I'm like, how are you guys not realizing right now? It's crazy. People have lied about Australia. People are scared of Australia and I don't know why. Who was out here saying that it's this dangerous country where you get bitten by spiders and stink? Because it's
Steve
not
Owen. It's Steve Owen. That's all I
true.
know.
That
Crocodile
is
Dundee, Steve Irwin. And he was like, check out this croc. And like, if I saw that and I was like, that is Australia. And then he's like jumping on a crocodile. And then he's, hanging around with spiders. And I would totally be like, nah, no, thank you.
we're changing the narrative.
Yeah. Because people have asked me for sure, like, do you
Yeah.
like have spiders everywhere? And I'm like, no, it's not Jurassic Park. Like, I'm not fighting spiders and stuff.
Honest about huntsman spiders, I do tell them about those, and Google images are not great. But in our defense, they're not harmful.
No, they're not great to look at. I came home once to a huntsman above my bed, and it was like the worst thing ever. I'm not into spiders, and I was like, oh, I'm here by
Hey,
myself.
I would evacuate. I'd be like, okay, room's yours. I'm going. There's no way I would sleep with that. Like,
Oh, I didn't sleep with it. I had to remove it. It was when I was working at a bank at the time, and it was like the worst thing ever that I came home. I just wanted to chill, and then I had to deal with
yeah, I've definitely been in situations where I've been the only one in the house and there's been a huntsman. And it was like midnight and I went and knocked on the neighbor's door and I was like, hush, I'm so sorry, but one of you need to deal with this because I'm not going to be able to sleep in this house. And they're like, yeah, let me get the bucket.
that. Honestly, people who get those spiders out alive, I'm like, you are a superhuman, and I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, they're doing God's work for sure.
But also, keep it away from me as far
Yeah.
away as possible.
They get like a suburb away because huntsmen find their way back.
Yeah, yeah, and they come in pairs, I think, as well.
Don't tell me that. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, before this conversation ends up any more unrailed, I'm gonna go into my last question that I've got for you. It's the only question that I actually plan on the show. So I lied when I said I don't plan any questions. It's the one I do plan. But if you had to recommend one album that everybody should listen to at least once to get I'm messing this question up. I'm going to start it again. You would think that after so many episodes, I could do this flawlessly.
You yourself out when you were like,
yeah. Yeah, you see? Oh, well. Anyway, if you had to recommend one album that everybody should listen to at least once to get an appreciation of, can be any genre of music, cannot be your own music, what would it be?
I would have said Read Between the Sheets, my EP coming out this Friday.
Or out now?
Oh, technically, by the time this is out now, because it's the greatest sex EP to have ever dropped. Makes you feel yourselves. But if it wasn't that, I would say, greatest album.
Doesn't even have to be the greatest, just one that people should listen to appreciate. Like, everyone should listen to this at least once.
I have to cheat and look at my Spotify.
You can cheat and look at Spotify.
I'm really like a huge album project person, but maybe just one that I'm loving now.
Yeah.
I would say, and I will say this because I really want to challenge people into listening to music that is of a different language. So I've been listening to a lot of French music right now. And I would say Haiki's music is incredible. He has an album, it's in French, so I've forgotten the name of it. Taiki, he's like this R&B French artist who is just incredible. This one album of his, it's called NYXIA, all in caps. Insane, incredible. And I encourage people to just listen, even if you don't understand what he's saying, listen to something of a different language. Like finding French music for me was the biggest blessing. Like I do speak a little bit of French, but it was such an incredible thing for me because the way they're on, the sound they're on, the emotions they express is so different. And it's just like, you're stepping outside of your normal. So definitely Taiki's music and like specifically that album.
I love that as a recommendation. I think, yeah, listening to different languages, you do feel
Yeah.
very like you're not distracted by lyrics. It's all feeling and it's all
Yeah,
sound. There's something really ethereal and cool about that.
I agree, which is ironic because I'm obsessed with lyrics and writing. But maybe that is why you're right. Maybe that is why I find so much peace in listening to French and Spanish music because I can just focus on the feeling and not analyzing every word.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good recommendation. That's a fantastic way to end the show. Isadora, it's been fantastic to have you. I'm really excited for this EP. I'll have to wait until Friday to listen to it, but for anyone who's listening to this, it will be out now. Make sure you read Between the Sheets, and check the rest of her music. It is awesome. You've got visuals, behind the scenes footage. You're doing amazing things. I cannot wait to keep seeing you grow and develop and push your artistry. And yeah, it's been awesome to speak to you. But before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to shout out or plug or mention?
Um, just that EP coming out, and I've got vinyls, which is going to be very exciting. So if you have a record player, or if you don't, check out the vinyl. And also, I want to shout out you for platforming startup artists and independent artists because that's amazing, and I really, really appreciate it.
No worries, my pleasure. You make it easy for me. So if I have interviews like this, then it makes my life very, very easy, and I just keep doing my thing. But yeah, no, as I said, it's been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to see your project release, and then I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks so much.